Welcome to CNN Student News, 10 minutes of commercial-free news for middle and high school classrooms. I'm Carl Azus. We appreciate you watching. First stories about a trip across the Pacific. President Obama is headed to 4 countries over the next week. He started in Japan. From there, he'll fly west to South Korea. The third leg of the trip will take him near the equator to Malaysia, and then he'll visit the Philippines before heading back home to the U.S. The president arrived in the Japanese capital of Tokyo yesterday. Japan's prime minister took him to dinner at a world-famous sushi restaurant. There's a formal state dinner scheduled for today, and throughout this trip, President Obama has some formal diplomatic challenges on his plate. One includes questions of how the U.S. can shift attention to Asia when it's been so focused on Syria, Ukraine, and the Middle East.
Well, it's interesting, right in the midst of the Ukraine crisis, in which the U.S. has tried to take the lead in finding a diplomatic solution there, here comes this very important Asian trip where some of the countries to be visited have very similar territorial worries, even disputes with China. Well, it's not so easy to espouse the values of national sovereignty and territorial integrity in one part of the world and then not address it in another. In fact, one Japanese newspaper asked President Obama about it even before he landed, about these disputed islands between Japan and China in the East China Sea. And the president didn't try to walk some middle ground. He definitively said he sides with Japan on this as the rightful administrator of those islands, and said that the U.S. opposes efforts to undermine that. Then you look at the Philippines and Malaysia. They have their own issues with China. So this is sure to be a topic that comes up again, and at times it is a sensitive one as this trip progresses. Michelle Kosinski, CNN, Tokyo.
For the first time in history, 2 popes, leaders of the Catholic Church, are being canonized at the same time. Canonization is when someone is declared a saint. It's a formal recognition by the Catholic Church that says someone lived a holy life, is in heaven, and that he or she deserves to be honored and imitated by the Catholic faithful. There have been 266 popes in all. 83 of them have been canonized. That includes Pope John the 23rd, who led the Catholic Church between 1958 and 1963, and Pope John Paul II, who led between 1978 and 2005. They're being declared saints this Sunday. And there's an air of expectation and excitement in Vatican City, seat of the Roman Catholic Church.
Overnight, it seems, the tourist shops around Vatican Square are packing in new lines of trinkets and books. Their focus? 2 former popes, and sales are booming.
Usually we sell more small images, cards with a prayer, or also the rosaries with the images. They are sold very well.
Never before have 2 popes been turned into saints on the same day. And Catholics and non-Catholics alike are curious, not only about Pope John the 23rd and John Paul II themselves, but also why they should become saints and why the unprecedented double canonization. Part of it goes back 50 years to the Second Vatican Council, called by John the 23rd to modernize the Church. The young Bishop Karol Wojtyła, who was to become John Paul II, was a part of those meetings too. But in the end, the council left the church divided between those who wanted more reform and those who wanted to stick with tradition. Those who knew both men will tell you that Pope Francis is now trying to heal that rift by canonizing 2 council participants who have come to represent those opposing views.
The Pope is going to bring together in one ceremony the father of the council and the son who put it into action.
Others will tell you that the reason for creating 2 new saints is because they share Catholic values that make them apt role models for our times.
But there's another, perhaps less spiritual reason. Call it reflected glory in the most literal sense of the term. For Pope Francis, who's already becoming one of the most popular popes in modern church history, to associate himself with 2 of his predecessors who are also admired can only enhance his reputation, perhaps strengthen the church.
In fact, Francis, John the 23rd, and John Paul II are 3 church superstars coming together for one canonical moment, certain to unite Catholics and perhaps renew their faith. So, while the Catholic Church already has thousands of saints, and adding 2 more might not seem like such a big deal, the double canonization of 2 popes takes on a historical, theological, and popular significance many church fathers hope will give new energy to a most ancient organization. Jim Bitterman, CNN, Rome.
The Bay State leads things off for today's CNN Student News Roll Call. Mansfield, Massachusetts. The Hornets are watching. They're honed in at Mansfield High School. Whether you call Illinois the Prairie State or the land of Lincoln, Danville High School is where you'll find the Vikings. They're online in Danville. And though North Dakota has a few state nicknames, the city of Belcourt is home of the Braves. They're watching from Turtle Mountain Middle School. Good to see you.
Time for the shout out. Which of these professional sports venues was the last to have lights installed? If you think you know it, shout it out. Was it Lambeau Field, Wrigley Field, Fenway Park, or Soldier Field? You've got 3 seconds. Go. Night games couldn't be played at Wrigley Field until 1988, when lights were finally installed. That's your answer, and that's your shout out.
Why did it take so long? Well, for one thing, the Chicagoans who lived around the stadium simply didn't want it lit up at night. When it was, on August 8, 1988, the Chicago Cubs, with home field advantage, were leading the Philadelphia Phillies 3-1. But it rained so hard in the fourth inning that the game was called. The next night, though, the Cubs beat the New York Mets 6-4. All part of the storied history of America's oldest stadium. Wrigley is turning 100.
And now we take you to beautiful Wrigley Field, the home of the Chicago Cubs.
From Babe Ruth's legendary called shot home run to Steve Bartman.
That's awfully close to fan interference right there.
And the curse of the Billy Goat. For the last 100 years, millions have experienced the joy and heartbreak of Wrigley Field.
The ball landed a few feet away from me at my right.
Chris Kirkos was in the left field bleachers 44 years ago when Mr. Cub, Ernie Banks, hit his 500th home run.
It was one of the most beautiful, remarkable days in my life. I love baseball.
History is everywhere here, from the ivy on the outfield wall to the center field scoreboard, built in the 1930s and still manually operated by guys like Darrell Wilson, who's been working here for almost 30 years.
Anytime you come to Wrigley, you know you're gonna have a good time, no matter if they win or lose.
Hey, big guy, did you catch a baseball yet?
Plenty of people have also found love at Wrigley. Tom Ricketts met his wife Cecilia as a fan in the center field bleachers 23 years ago.
So you guys be good. Take care.
Now he's the team owner.
The beauty of a 100-year-old ballpark is this is the ballpark that your dad took you to. This is the ballpark that his dad brought him to. And this is the ballpark that your great-grandfather took your grandfather to. So it's got that history.
Legendary Cubs announcer Harry Carey spent 16 years with the Cubs singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" during the 7th inning stretch.
Good and loud.
Ted Rubin, CNN, Chicago.
Most grocery stores advertise that they're about low prices and high quality. This one is raising the bar, and customers are leaping with joy. Okay, not exactly, but the high jumping going on at the Hy-Vee grocery store, the Hy-Vee high jump, if you will, is part of an Iowans effort to get track and field events out of Drake Stadium in Des Moines and into the community. Nearly 1,000 onlookers jumped at the chance to watch. It was high excitement at the track meet department. We can't say any records were produced, that'd be kind of a leap, and someone would have had to mark it. But the event gave the store a leg up on the competition, brought people running down the aisle, and it was shoe fun to check out. I'm Carl Azus, and that's another show in the bag, y'all.